Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pilates Bridge Live Show. Today, we're going to be talking all about building a sellable Pilates studio. It doesn't matter whether you are running a studio right now and you are in the mindset of selling it, or if you're just starting a studio and just trying to figure out how to make it more profitable, how to prepare it. Today, I'm talking to Christa Gurka. She's the founder of Pilates in the Grove in South Florida. And she recently actually sold her multi-location Pilates and wellness brand. And today she is fully dedicated to helping wellness and Pilates and wellness business owners to really run their businesses with profitability, confidence, and just really freedom. So thank you so much, Christa, for being here with us. And just to get us started, to kick us off, can you please share us a little bit about your story, your Pilates story, your wellness, your business? How did you get to where you are today?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. I really do love talking about this so other women can see kind of like what's available to them in this industry. So I have a master's of science in physical therapy. I'm a physical therapist by trade and by degree, and I was working in a physical therapy clinic where we did Pilates-based physical therapy clinic. This was back in 2005, 6, 7. And I said to my boss at the time, I said, this seems so silly. We got all these people that love Pilates when they're done with therapy, and we're sending them to different studios. And he was like, well, what do you think? And I was like, we should just have like 4 reformers here, and that would be so great. And he was like, sure, do it. And I was like, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? How do I do it? So that's how it started in 2007. I opened with 3 other partners and $2,400 upstairs from like a bakery. It was second floors, 300 square feet. I think we had 5 reformers. And that's kind of how it started. I would eventually leave my physical therapy practice. And over the next 18 years, grow to multiple locations, a team of over 20, I think at the height, go through a global pandemic, which was crazy. And then, yes, this year, in March of 2025, I sold the majority shares of Pilates in the Grove to private equity. So I had a very successful exit. So it was exciting, an exciting journey, a lot of bumps along the way, but it's totally doable based on what people want in their goal. And I also think it was great what you said, like, it doesn't have to be that you have any plan to sell. But if you build your business into a sellable asset, you have choices. You could pull away from the day-to-day operations. You could, teach as much as you want, as little as you want. You could have accessible income. And then if God forbid the universe has, we call them the 3Ds, death, divorce, or disability, and you have to get out, then your business is already prepared for that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of teachers, when they start teaching or have a dream of opening their Pilates studio, they don't think about those things. And over the years that I've been in the business, working with different studio owners, I've seen that, unfortunately, more times than I would like to, where people had to close their studio, mostly because of the health issues, or the move and things like that. And their studios were just not set up. They were not set up for a sellable asset, so they had to close this baby that they built. I don't know. It's just so sad always when you pour something, your heart, into something, into building that business, and then you have to see it die, basically.
Close.
So close. Yeah, but
again, it's
close. I know
it is sad, and
it is very sad.
I believe that if you sell like I said, if you set your business up like you're going to sell it, you just it gives you more options and more choices down the road.
So I think for a lot of business owners, it feels like they almost, even they've been running a studio for a while, they almost hit that ceiling, and they feel like, okay, where do I go? There's only so much I can teach. There's only so many reformers, or this is the top. Can you share what it really looks like just to kind of go past those those ceilings, I guess, that a lot of business owners put for themselves?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think, well, the truth of the matter is that the majority of Pilates studios are not profitable, are not as profitable as they should be. So the more important thing than the ceiling is, are you at your ceiling and are you profitable? Because there are studios that are running and operating, and all studios, Pilates, yoga, bar, any type of boutique fitness, they're operating on very thin margins. Okay. A healthy margin, a healthy profit margin in our industry is somewhere between 12 and 18%, ideally being 15% profitable while the owner is on payroll. So that means that the owner's salary is an expense of the business, which gets confusing for people because if you're a sole proprietor and you're an LLC, but you're not an S Corp, which some people might be like, I don't even know what these things are. I want to stop listening. But that's what profitability is. So if you're bringing in $100,000 in the studio, then a profit margin of $15,000 is 15%. And that's what's healthy. But if you're bringing in $100,000 and you're left with $2,000 at the end of all your expenses going out, that's not profitable. And it's really hard to sustain a business when you don't have profit, because you don't have any cash reserves. And we saw this a lot in COVID when studios were closing in April or May because they didn't have enough cash to pay their rent or keep any staff on board or invest in technology. Like they were out of cash reserves. So, there's a lot of different things to look at when you're talking about that ceiling. Are you optimized for profitability? Because yes, we have only so many machines, we have only so much space, there's only so much time in the day, but are you optimized within all of that? Okay. If people are profitable and they have no more space or no more time, then I say, is it time for a second location? Is it time to hire? Is it time to, expand an offering? Where can you go from that? If that is what you want to do, because with growth comes more expenses, comes more people. Managing more people costs more, and not only money, but in like physical labor and emotional labor. And the owner has to be ready and willing to go to that next level.
Yeah, I think heard somewhere, maybe a podcast was reading somewhere, but really when we're talking about profitability is important, but also when you're running a business, like once you reach a certain level, it's really the time that becomes your biggest really reward for everything that you're doing. And if you're doing everything in the business and not thinking about the profitability, you end up losing all of your time and all of the freedom, and then it only leads to the burnout at the end because you can't do it all.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, if you want your business to grow and you want your business to operate outside of you as the owner operator, then you can't do everything. It's impossible and it's not sustainable. Now, there are certainly some business owners, some studios that's what they want. They want it to be them. They have a home studio, they have a small studio space. They want it to just be them. And that's perfectly fine. They can certainly have a successful business that way. The limitations to that model are when that person doesn't work, there's no money generated. However, I know plenty of people that have home studios and still make six figures a year. They just set their business up with that model in mind for success. So, when you have a larger business and you have team and all this stuff, it really is important to build a solid foundation and infrastructure. So for example, when we're teaching people Pilates, right? When people come in, if they've never done Pilates before, we don't start them with the teaser. We don't start them with hanging series on the Cadillac. No, we build them up and we make sure that we have good foundation for movement in order to be like, okay, now let's take it to the next level. And what happens with business owners, not to our fault, nobody taught us any of this. We go into business and then we're like, oh, we need to do XYZ thing without building the infrastructure for which to grow the business. So we start with no systems, we start with no boundaries, we start with no expectations, right? And so sometimes then the train just gets away from us a little far, and that's when people start to feel like burnt out.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that, I know you mentioned running the home studio. Do you think a home studio or like single operator run studio can be a sellable business?
It's tough. What you can sell in that situation is you could probably sell it to someone that maybe has worked under you for a while. Like at some point you would have to hire somebody and maybe pass it along to them. And this is what, like, I hear this in Facebook forums all the time, when people talking about their business. Unfortunately, our client list is not really worth anything unless it's not tied to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we could have you could be like, oh, I've been doing this for 10 years. I have so many solid clients. I have people that come 3 days a week. But if you leave, that client list is worth nothing. So for those of you that are listening and are like, no, my client list is everything. Well, then unfortunately, that's not what people are buying. What people are buying, what acquirers are looking for are systems, like a turnkey operation. They can come in, continue to operate it as it was being operated, and nothing or very little will change. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I had created in my business a space where I was no longer teaching. I was no longer running the day-to-day operation. I was sitting in the marketing seat. So I was leading the vision and the strategy for marketing. But for the most part, my salary, I could go away for 3, 4, 5 months and the business would continue to operate like nothing changed. And so that was what is valuable to the acquirers. My team is accountable. They know what they're supposed to do. They understood their expectations. Everyone was an employee. We had very few contractors. So, and again, I had somebody that was running the day-to-day operations that was not me.
So I know this is like a big thing for a lot of studio owners. They feel like the business cannot survive without them, literally. It's them answering the phone, teaching classes, like making sure that everything right the way it's supposed to be. So what were the first steps that you personally took to get out of that day to day? Like what were your first hires, and what were the steps that you took to get out of being everything at the studio and everybody?
Yeah. So when people tell me that they couldn't leave or their studio would die, then I'm like, that's on you, because that's a system you created and you set up. All right. So for me, from the very beginning, when I started my studio, my kids were, 2008, my kids were like 2 and 4. So young. They're 22 and 20 now. So they're they were young. So I was also a mom, for my 2 children. And so I always knew that I didn't want this to be all about me. I always knew that. So this name is not in my name. It doesn't have my initials. It was Pilates in the Grove. And I always had a team going in because I did not want to work 80 hours a week. So I had other instructors. I eventually hired a front desk staff, but my first excuse me, my first non-revenue generating hire was a bookkeeper. So when I say non-revenue generating, not another instructor, right? So instructors, but I always had people on my team. Where I got stuck And where I got lost was when I started expanding and opening more locations, and I couldn't be everywhere at the same time. I had not, even though our location where I was, the flagship location, was doing great, it was because I was there all the time and I was kind of leading by example. But as soon as I started opening my second location, I realized I need to get these systems like out of my head and onto paper. And I also need to start holding people accountable for those roles that they took on. So I'll give you an example. Like I used to feel badly telling people like, oh no, they have to work on, like they couldn't take a day off, or they couldn't, um, take 3 weeks off in the summer. And so what I did was, even around holidays as a perfect example, like around the week between Christmas and New Year's, everyone wants off. And so I just give everyone off, and I would work 80 hours. I would teach 50 classes because I felt bad. And then I was like, well, feeling bad is my problem. I have to just be like, these are the processes, this is the policy in the studio. And then also hold people accountable to those policies and have them understand why we're doing this, right? So while I would love to be closed, we are very busy during this time, right? And our core value, customer commitment, means that we are going to be available to our clients. And so while I would love to give everyone the week off, we have to work together as a team to make sure that we can continue to serve classes and stuff like that. So usually what happens from being a baby business, and when I say baby, I just mean like it's new, right? So you're learning. The next stage is when you start to grow into maturity, and the owner at the time has to move from technician, the one delivering the service, to the one leading and managing people. And that is a very different skill set that we have to learn. And that's the hardest thing for people. That's when you start hearing people say, I don't have anyone on my team that can do these things, or I don't trust them to do it right, or no one's accountable. And I'm like, well, is that a you problem then? Because if you don't have anyone on your team that you can trust, who are you hiring? That sounds like a hiring problem to me, or an onboarding problem, or an expectation problem.
So I'm actually going to bring up a question that was submitted, I think, because it goes really well with all of this. Like Lisa, she was asking, how do I stop micromanaging? Which is probably a lot of what you're discussing. A lot of that is just micromanaging.
It is. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for that?
It's really hard. I mean, I have a lot of tips because I was a big micromanager. And why do we micromanage? Most of us that are entrepreneurs, most of us, I will say, did not think we were ever going to be entrepreneurs. I'm like, I was an accidental entrepreneur. I kind of got thrown into this. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what brick and mortar meant when I first started my business. I was on a call one time and I had to Google it. I was like, what does brick and mortar mean? So we are high achieving people. And usually high achieving perfectionist people pleasers, the reason we want control is because we fear other people seeing us fail. And we fear being judged by a certain way. So we micromanage to make that control. We have to learn to do what's called like let go of the vine. If we micromanaging, and I've learned this, is one of the biggest things that will stifle innovation in your team. So what we have to learn how to do is, one, like the 80% rule is, if they're doing it 80% well, let it be. Let it be, right? If someone's doing the teaser 80% well, let it be. Let them move. Like, great, right? So the first thing we have to say is, this 80% good? Okay, great. And as long as it gets done, does it matter in which order they do it, right? And if you want it done in a certain order, then that should be the process. And then you have to hold them accountable for that process. So for an example, like one of the things that I used to do with my team is really have clear understanding of what done looks like to both of us. So if I said to one of my team members, okay, the policy is that when someone doesn't show, if there's a no-show, you have to call the person. Okay. But
Mm-hmm.
if I say to my front desk person, so what does done look like to you? You could be like, oh, I sent them a text. Maybe done to me looks like you sent them a text and you picked up the phone and you let them know that there was going to, and you sent an email, right? And then you documented that in the system. So now if you're both agreeing that that's what done looks like, and this other person doesn't do it, then you can hold them accountable and you can say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't complete the process. But if they did do that, and maybe they didn't write the note exactly the same that you would like, it's still done. Okay. So we have to learn to let it go. There's a great book. I don't know where I have it, but it's called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control. It's a great
Mm-hmm.
book. Actually, it's right there. It's by Catherine Morgan Schaffler. Catherine Morgan Schaffler. It's called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control.
Okay.
And it's a really good book for us perfectionists to learn how to let go of the vine.
Yeah, I think it's great,
Yeah.
and
And we have
I
to
know.
start we
Yeah.
can't if we micromanage, we'll just build resentment in our team. So that's an us problem. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if it becomes like, well, they don't do it right, then that's a training problem. You just have to train them better.
Yeah, I think that's what I see a lot as well, is that sometimes it's hard um, for teachers or business owners to explain their expectations. Like you said, right? Like it's all in their head,
Yeah.
but it's nowhere else. And they expect somebody to do something at their standard without ever sharing what that standard specifically is and what are all the steps in between. So if we expect somebody
Exactly.
to have like this magic power of telepathy and understand everything that we're doing just because they watched us a couple of times, this is never
Wouldn't
going
that
to
be great?
happen. I know, right?
Wouldn't
Like
that
it's
be
going to
great?
simplify.
We would never, nobody would get divorced. Nobody would be estranged. Like everything would work great. But it doesn't happen that way. And nor should
No,
it. They can't read your mind.
no.
So we need to clearly articulate. That's why we should have standard operating procedures. That's why we should have check-ins with your team. And if someone is getting it wrong, you have to figure out, like, where's the kink in the chain? Was that I didn't train them properly, or they're just not doing their job properly?
Mhm.
It could be that they're not doing their job properly, in which case you as a business owner have a decision to make. Is this the right person in the right seat in my business?
Yeah. So, talking about this operating procedures, obviously in order to train somebody, you need to create those procedures. And what's stopping a lot of business owners from creating these procedures, because it takes time
Takes
to
time.
create them and
Yeah.
write down. So how did you handle that in your business? How were you able to create? Did you just write down everything you were doing? Did it take a long time? How did it happen for you?
Yes. So that's a great question. And that's exactly why people don't want to do it, because it takes time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I tell people this all the time. You're going to pay with time or money. I don't care where you are in your business. You're going to pay with either your time or your money. So if you're a newer business and you don't have a lot of money, you're going to pay with your time. And you have to schedule that time to make it happen. If you're later in your business and you're doing well and you have more money than time, then you can pay someone to help you do that. Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would say to write out everything that you do more than once in your business. So take like a week. And if you have an admin person, maybe ask them every single thing you do today. I just want you to take it on a note and just write it down. Okay. Then you decide which are the most important processes that you have to get down on paper. Okay. And you just decide, I'm going to write one process a month for the next year. That's it. I'm going to write one process a month. And at 12 months, you'll have 12 processes down. So when we look at processes, what are the processes we have? So you have onboarding a new client. So what does that process look like, right? They schedule an intro session. They come to the intro session. Is there a follow-up email sequence that gets sent to them? Does the person at the front desk say something to them? Like, what is that sequence, right? You have a social media sequence, maybe a process. Who's setting the strategy? Who's creating the graphics? Who's creating the posts? We have a time off policy. What's the time off policy, right? What is the hiring process? What is the onboarding process for the new hire? Okay, so like they onboard, this is what you're training them with in the first 30 days, then in the next 30 days, then in the next 30 days. So you can just list out all of your different processes and just try to tackle one each month. And by the end of the, a year, you'll have 12 built out processes for which to go off of.
And I think today that's sometimes technology helps us, sometimes it doesn't. But in today's world, not everybody's talking about AI. And
Oh yeah, you can totally
one
use AI.
great thing is that this is where you can really use it. You don't want to write it, just talk to it and explain, let it write out all your process, so it can it can shave off hours of your time by creating the same work. And you'll have to kind of edit it and all of that, but it's not as overwhelming as it was before, right? Like 10 years ago.
Yeah, you can use ChatGPT. The best thing if you're going to use AI, ChatGPT is my go-to. I also like Claude, but I think ChatGPT is a little bit better. Claude is another one, Claude.ai. I don't love Gemini right now. I think there's still a few things that they need to work on. However, the best way to use it is to train your AI bot. So if you're going to use something like ChatGPT, it's worth it to pay the $20 a month so you can get the pro plan and then train your bot. So basically you're going to tell it, I'm Pilates in the Grove. We are a multi-location boutique Pilates studio that has all of the apparatus. Our client is XYZ person. Our core values are da, 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 da. What would, so here's a prompt you could do. Act as an HR manager for a boutique fitness company and give me an outline of every standard operating procedure in a boutique fitness business. And it will spit it out for you. Then you can say, you get the outline. Then you can be like, okay, help me build out my social media process. What questions do I need to answer for you to help me build out my social media process? And then it will help you like list out the process. So definitely using AI, but training it and prompting it properly is how to get the best results out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just providing it, especially if you wanted to write like like in the process, it's not quite as important, right? It can be pretty AI-ish. But if you are using AI in any type of like marketing specifically or anything like that, just make sure that you provide your actual voice, like your writings, everything, because this is something, I know it's kind of like a little bit on the sidetrack, but I see that a lot, unfortunately, right now, that people use AI just to write their newsletters, because all of a sudden they can send out all these newsletters and they don't have to write them, but all of them, they just sound like AI with all the same emojis, with everything. Like everyone I get from all the different studios, they all sound pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But
you can
just make sure it's your voice.
You can take screenshots of your website. You can take screenshots of like your blogs that you have on there. You can write your brand voice in there. You want to be fun. You want to be playful. You want to be professional. You want to be educational. You can say things like, never use new year, new you type technology. Never use bikini body or Pilates body, or like you could put in there the things that you wanted to learn. And that's why, again, training your bot to understand who you are is like really important, because then it really does learn. And ChatGPT has come a long way from when I first started using it a couple years ago to now. I can see like the responses are just so much better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just on the app, on the phone, I love the text to speech feature for it, because this is like the fastest way to get stuff out of my head in any moment, where I'm driving, walking, running, wherever the thought comes, it can be there, and there's going to be a social post or whatever it is that you wanted to do. But back to building a sellable studio. Let's build a business first, right? So another important part of building a business are the financials. And I know this is something that a lot of studios, again, they don't like talking about it. They don't like looking at the books. What are some of the important parts of organizing your financials, I guess, especially if you're looking at selling the studio? Because I know it can be a lot for a lot of different situations, but like, let's say if you're in the mindset of selling your studio within X number of years, what types of financials do you want to show? How do you want to organize things?
Yeah. So the number one thing I can say about that is you have to know your numbers. When you decided to start a business and own a business, you made the commitment to understand your numbers. Like, that is part of the responsibility. Okay. So for people that are like, well, I'm not good at math, that's just an excuse. And I get that you might not be comfortable with math, but this is part of your responsibility as an owner. So you have to know your numbers. You don't have to be your bookkeeper. In fact, I would say don't be your own bookkeeper. Hire a bookkeeper, but you need to know how to access your profit and loss statement. So I'll talk about the 3 most important financial documents that you need to have. I'm a big believer in having a software like QuickBooks. Some people use Wave. Wave. I'm a QuickBooks person. I just think most people use QuickBooks. But so your profit and loss, which is also called your income statement, really has, what that is teaching you is it's all the money you bring in and all the money you put out and what's left over. All right. You can see on this profit and loss statement, that's why it's called profit and loss. Okay. So what you are spending too much in. All right. And so I did create a freebie for your audience that actually has, since we're talking about financials, it is actually a cheat sheet on what healthy expenses are. Okay. So we'll drop that link for you guys.
I'm doing it right now.
Great. So what it'll show you is that if your payroll, for example, is 50% or more of what you're bringing in, it will be very difficult for you to be profitable. Very difficult. Okay. And I'll actually do this little math right here. Let me, since you can see, let me
see. Let me open up. Here we go.
Okay.
You're full screen now.
Perfect. Okay. So actually I only see you instead of
but yeah.
You can see my whole screen?
Yeah. Okay. It's broadcasting your screen.
Great. So let's just say that you charge, just do even numbers. Someone charges $100 for a private. Okay. If you pay your instructor 50%, right? You're down $50. Okay. So now you're at $50. Okay. Now rent usually is around 10% of our income. So now you take another $10. Now you're at $40. Okay. Now, usually another 10%, let's even say it's low. Let's say it's 5% goes to marketing. Okay. So that's $5. So let's go minus $5. So now that's $35. Then you have your credit card fees, which are usually 3%. So that's $3. So now like minus $3. So now you're at $32. Okay. Out of your $32, Now you have to pay all of your operational expenses, which is usually around 20 to 30% of our business. So let's even say on the low end, that's 20%. That's another $20. So did you lose me over here, or am I still good?
No, all
I'm
good.
still
All
good?
good. Yeah.
Okay. So minus $20. All right. Now you're at $12. Okay. So with $12, you have to pay yourself, you have to pay your utilities, you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay. So you're already, and then forget about like, what about if this person's an employee and you have to pay payroll taxes on all of that. So let's say you have another 10% that's like payroll taxes. If you have an admin, your utilities and all of that stuff, that's another minus $10. You're left with $2. $2 for, like, this is no rainy day fund. You can't survive on $2. All right. So what happens is, this is what I tell people. So when instructors or people say, well, I do all the work, I should get 50% or more of the income, the revenue. I'm like, and listen, I was an instructor for many, many, many years. So I'm not saying this to belittle an instructor. Yes, you are extremely valuable, but teaching the session is the easiest part of running a business. Okay. And you get to keep 100% of this. The business owner now has to share their $50 that they keep with all of this. And this is, now they're left with $2. And now you want to know why your business owner is freaking out and stressed all the time? This is why. They have to try to operate a business with $2. It's not doable.
No, it's not.
Okay, it's not sustainable. So this is what's really important, and why you have to know, like, gosh, my payroll is really high. I need to figure out how to take that better. So I'm not telling you to go to your team and tell them, oh, guess what? Everyone's going to get a $20 pay cut. No, I'm saying, where else in your expenses can you see, like, are you paying too much in rent? Do you have to like cut your marketing budget a little bit? Do you have to raise your prices to match the percentage that you're paying out to your team? Okay. So when you look at your profit and loss statement, you will be able to see there's a report that you can run too that shows it as a percentage of your income. So you can really see, like, oh wow, like this is 40%. This is a lot. Like, I'm way over. Okay. So it's really important to look at your balance sheet. You have to know your profit. You should know how much money you brought in, and you should know how much money is going out. Okay. So that's financial report number one. The balance sheet is a little bit harder for people to understand. It's a little more confusing. But the balance sheet is basically, what the balance sheet is telling you is what you own and what you owe. Okay. So imagine like you bought a house. Most of us, when we buy a house, we have a mortgage, right? So technically, we don't own the whole house until we completely pay it off. All right. So we might own the front door or a couple windows. So it's the same in our business if we have a lot of debt. So if you have a credit card debt, if you took out loans, if you're paying down, like maybe you're leasing equipment or something, like that kind of stuff lives on your balance sheet because you don't own it yet. It's what you owe. But what also lives on your balance sheet is your equity and what you do own. All right. So that's what the balance sheet is looking at. And then you have your cash flow statement, which just basically talks about how much cash is in your business. Most owners, most buyers, acquirers, they're looking for a few different things. And I'll tell you what they're looking for if you want me to go into that a little bit. But
absolutely.
Most buyers are looking for a few different, what would I say, like touch points. Okay. One, how dependent on the owner is the business? That's one of the things they're looking for. If the owner leaves, how much of the business will be affected? Okay, that's number one. Number two, what is the growth potential of your business? How much can, because they don't care what happened in the past. They want to know what's going to happen in the future that will benefit them. So that's one thing. Number three is cash. They want to see that you have cash in your business. And so some business owners will be like, my revenue's so good, I'm doing really well, but I have no money in the bank. And the reason that is because they maybe owe a lot of money. Maybe they're in debt. Maybe they're paying things off. Maybe they're like this underwater and they can't get themselves out of it. So there are lots of businesses that go under, not because they're not generating enough revenue, but they don't have enough cash on hand to make decisions. And it's also a reason why business owners feel so burnt out, because they feel like they're working their off and they don't have anything to show for it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start getting cash reserves, it makes difficult times easier. So a water main breaks on the street and you have to close the studio for the day because it's flooded. Well, maybe it doesn't, maybe what was I going to say? Maybe it doesn't feel as bad when you have $50,000 sitting in your bank account, because you're like, okay, one day is not. But when you have $5 sitting in your bank account or $2 sitting in your bank account, that really stresses you out. Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes what business owners should really be looking at, especially if they are interested in selling or being able to step away from the business, is the cash on hand and the profitability of the studio. So I like to say that revenue and sales are kind of vanity metrics, because people can, like, for example, Uber was a multi-million-dollar company and zero profit. Okay. So there's lots of businesses out there that can say they generate 7, 8, 9 figures in revenue, but are not profitable. So what's important is that your top line, which is, they call it top line because on the P&L, it's the top line of your P&L statement, is equally important as the bottom, like the bottom line. So what you're left with. Okay. So sometimes, some years in business, you might be saying, so one year, 2023 for Pilates in the Grove, our goal was optimizing profitability. So my goal was not necessarily increasing my top line revenue. It was, how can I be more profitable? So every decision I made for the entire year, along with my team, was, is this going to make us more profitable or less profitable? Right. So that was for me. And that's what buyers are looking for. They're looking for profitability of a company. How dependent on it as how dependent is it on the owner, and how much cash is constantly, which is why recurring revenue, recurring memberships is a big thing for successful sales.
So actually, that was one of the questions that came in, and it deals a little bit with the sales and also managing the team. It's important to keep those sales coming, right? And it's important to have the right team on your side. And Michelle is asking is how to train the teachers to be sales representatives, basically, for the studio.
That's a great question. Yeah, I
Because
think
that's an important part of it all.
Totally. So when you're looking at sales, and at least for Pilates in the Grove, every single one of the people on the team was part of the sales process. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you have a great marketing process and you're getting great people in the door, but you have a shitty sales process, like, that's terrible, right? Because you get all these great people in the door and nobody sells. The thing with instructors is, we have to just, sales gets like a sleazy word, a bad connotation. But what we're trying to tell people is, we're giving somebody what they're asking for. We're actually doing a disservice to them if we don't show them how they can work with us and achieve their goals. Okay. So for instructors specifically, these people are coming to the studio. Let me get a quick drink of water.
Yeah.
They're coming to the studio. They're already here. They're already putting their hand up and saying, I would love to try Pilates. So they're asking for it. So your role as an instructor is to teach a really phenomenal class. And the way that we did it in our team was, what does that look like for the instructors? So that looks like to me that if there's a new person in class, you've seen on the system who that new person is, and you go and greet them by name, right? And you say, hi, Christa, you're new today. Oh, do you have any injuries? Anything? My name is Jane. Anything you need, just let me know. That's number one. Number two, you kind of like go to that person throughout the class, right? You kind of can say, oh, great job. Oh, a little bit of tactile cueing, a little bit of support, good job, Jane. You did, great job. After class, you should speak to them after class and be like, do you have any questions? How do you feel? Let me walk you to the front desk and talk to, Tiffany, excuse me, at the front desk. She's going to set you up. She can tell you all about packages and all of this stuff. And I'd love to see you. I teach again on Friday. Will I see you again? And that is the way that the teachers can be involved in the sales process. But in order for them to know that, you have to have that process. So at Pilates in the Grove, we had a complete sales process that was, they come in, there's something that the person at the front desk is supposed to do when this person comes in. There's something that, just like I talked about with the instructors, there's something that the instructors are supposed to do throughout the class. There's something that the person at the front desk is supposed to do after the class. And then we have a whole series of automated check-ins. Okay. We have an email automation that goes out. We have a text automation that goes out. And we found in all the years that we were tracking this, that it takes like 4.5 touch points from someone to convert from an intro offer to a long-term membership. Now, those touch points can be automated or in person. So we made sure that the front desk had a touch point, the instructor had a touch point, we had automated emails and texts, and then usually our manager sent like a text. So that's how every single person knows what their responsibility is within the touch point, within that process, and they just make sure that they have to do it.
So what about,
and it's like a checks and balances.
Yeah. So for the studio that doesn't have a front office person.
So then yeah, that's great. And some don't. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is, then I would say, are you missing out by not having someone at the front? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not saying that that's the answer, right? I'm just saying, if it's a private studio and it's just one-on-one, you probably don't need to have someone there. The instructor should be able, but they have to know what the process is. So if the process is, so on a private one-on-one, there's nobody at the front desk. Great. You greet the person. You should know their name. You have their schedule there. You talk to them. What are their goals? They finish the session. They're saying, okay, so what questions can I answer for you? This is, what I recommend. And here's the other thing. The person is not the expert. The client is not the expert. They're coming and they're asking you, like, what should I do next? And the instructor should have an answer that's like, well, you told me that you think Pilates is going to be the only exercise that you're doing. So then generally what we recommend is 2 to 3 times a week. If you're going to be consistent with 2 to 3 times a week, our memberships are the best bang for your buck. They're the lowest cost for you. Or maybe this other person's like, I hear what you're saying is maybe this will be an adjunct to your CrossFit or your running training. So if you're coming once a week, maybe a class pack or a session package will be best for you. And so I'd love to sign you up with that now. When can we get you on? Let's get you on the schedule today. So if your sessions so this is also then becomes part of the infrastructure. So if their sessions are 60 minutes and you run 60 minutes, like the instructor doesn't have any time to do that. Mm-hmm. So we always made our sessions 50 minutes, 50. And so there was a little 10-minute gap that the instructor had time to do that before the next person comes in. But that process can't just live in your head. It has to be articulated, and you have to be assessing the instructor on that. You can look at them and say, hey, your conversion rate from a new intro to a membership is like 10%. It's really low. What can we do to make that better? How can I support you in that? Where's the disconnect? What are you finding difficult? Right? And listening to them for that. Because you should have like a 40% conversion rate from a new lead into a longer term package. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of times when teachers come to the studio, they come with the assumption, I just want to teach Pilates, right?
Teach.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
care about. And for the studio owners, it's important to articulate that, well, if you work for our studio, you're not just teaching Pilates. Part of your job is
Correct.
making sure that you keep the client. So it's not like, okay, here's this unlimited supply of clients that come and go, and it doesn't matter whether they stick around or somebody else comes. It's your job to make sure that they convert and that they come back and they like your classes, because this is what your job depends on. And which a
Exactly.
lot of times teachers, they don't feel like their job is on the line per se, right? It's like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah, and that's again where it comes down to your infrastructure. And so if somebody feels like they can do no wrong, they're not going to do anything right. If they feel you're never going to, it's like the parent that's like, if you do that one more time, you're not getting ice cream, and then they get ice cream. Like they eventually learn, like, it doesn't matter what I do. Right. So it's important that they talk to them about what the expectations are in their onboarding process. So you set these clear expectations. And also, I do believe that my instructors, their number one priority is to teach the best session they can teach. That's what their role in the sales process is. But teaching the best session doesn't just mean teaching the Pilates. It's also how you interact and relate with that client. It's what kind of rapport you build with them. And so people buy in much more to that sometimes than the quality, especially new people, because new people don't know good Pilates from bad Pilates. They just know how that instructor made them feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And making sure that the studio has a unified character, so to say, among the teachers.
That's a great
Yeah.
way to put it. Yeah.
All right. So I know we're coming up on the hour over here. I wanted to cover a couple more questions here, just that were submitted, just to make sure that we answer them here. So one of them. So one was, and I know this is a big question, so maybe you can just give just like top level overview. When you're running a studio, it's important, obviously the client acquisition is an important part of it, the marketing. For your studio, the question is like, what are the marketing tactics for local Pilates studios with limited budget? What would be the top things to focus on when you don't, like, when you barely have $5 for your marketing budget?
So if you don't have money to put behind ad spends, okay, and if you're going to spend money on ads for a local service business, then I recommend Google search ads. They're the best bang for your buck because people are actually searching for what you're offering. If you have a very low budget, then there's things like your website. Your website is part of your marketing. So how can you make sure that your website really speaks to your ideal customer, right? Making sure that SEO is optimized on your website. So if you are in a local area, one of your headers, like your H1 header on your website, should say best Pilates studio in Miami, because that's for SEO. Okay. So best reformer studio in Miami. So those are things that you can do that are low cost in terms of marketing. The other thing is it is hard to be findable on social right now, but I do think it's important to have some sort of a presence. You don't have to post every single day, but most people are going to look, if they find you, they're going to go to your social media pages. So you can have some sort of a social presence. It doesn't cost you that much just to put some posts up there. So again, that's low cost. Another thing is growing your email list. Email is something that you as a business own. Okay, you own your website. Hopefully you haven't paid somebody else, like it's not behind a paywall to somebody else, but hopefully you own your website. You own your email list. You don't own Instagram or Facebook. Okay, like if those things shut down, you lose everything. But you do own your email list. So when you're doing community collaborations, can you make sure that you use a QR code or something to get email addresses and then nurture these people with an email campaign? That doesn't cost you anything except maybe the cost of your CRM, which is very low cost. We did a few things. This is some of the things we taught in like my membership group when we were doing marketing training. Things like we went to a local coffee shop that was we actually had it was interesting. They had the same coffee shop and bookstore was very close to both of our locations. So we did this collaboration with them where we offered to pay for coffee sleeves. And it said on the coffee sleeves, it said something for the coffee one. We said like pie and latte. No, it said Pilates. That whole thing, Pilates. No, I thought you said pie and lattes.
Mm-hmm.
And it said something like, you won't be disappointed. And it had a QR code on the sleeve. And when they clicked on it, it went to our website. So that was cute. And then we did a book one with a bookstore that said with a bookmark, it said, Pilates is for your body, what reading is for your brain. And it had a little QR code. And we had, so those, like, if you have like-minded businesses, you can go and try to collaborate with them. Even if we bought the coffee sleeves, I think we got like 1,000 coffee sleeves for like $200. Right. So,
yeah.
And then when you use a QR code, you can see how many people are landing on that page. So, like, is it working or is it not working? Right. And so just being out in your community and doing those kind of things. So again, I go back to that. You're going to pay with time or money. So if you don't have a big budget, you're going to pay with your time more. So it's like doing workshops, being, volunteering your time to maybe teach a class at Athleta or Lululemon, or doing a stretch with a running store, or doing something with a smoothie store. So like that would be how I would say for a local brick and mortar that doesn't have a lot of budget.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and it's I know you mentioned something about social media, and I want to again, this is something that I hear a lot from the studios who don't have time for it. But even though I don't think that social media directly drives, like you said, just new customers to your studio, it does increase the brand awareness for you. And even if you just want to be found, as of late, like several months ago, when people search for services on their phones, which is what they're doing, like Pilates near them, the social media post is one of the first things that actually show up. The Instagram reels and like the classes, or somebody, some influencer doing, like in the bigger areas, the influencer coming to a class, or even one of your posts, things like that. So that all contributes, and the more space, real estate you can occupy on the search results page, the more chances you have to show up.
Yeah. All right. And it's just another touch point of a customer trying to find you. And younger people now, like millennials and Gen Z, when they go to places to visit, like they'll search a lot of times the hashtag, like, Coconut Grove local, Santa Monica local. And that hashtag is usually all the local stuff that's in the area. So that's a hashtag that you should use in your studio's postings, where you can have like your city and then hashtag city local. So hashtag Coconut Grove local, hashtag South Miami local, hashtag, like Atlanta local. So like when people are in the area, they can find you.
Yeah. And like the millennials, especially, and younger ones, they do use Instagram a lot to find actual businesses on their maps. And so, that's a different crowd there. All right. So final question. And I think that's going to be, again, came from one of our listeners here. So what's your best advice for an aspiring studio owner who's just about to open a studio? It's actually came from Tanya. She's about to open her first studio. So like she's a brand new, she's in the baby stage over there.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations. I think it's right now, Pilates is an exciting place to be. It's having a huge moment. The best thing I can tell you is think of running your business the way that you learn Pilates, right? There was a training involved. There was teaching you the history and the principles and that kind of stuff. And then you started moving. So if we thought about running our business the same way, like what infrastructure do I need to have in order to grow with a solid foundation? Okay. So my best advice is ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Look to people maybe that have been doing that are doing what you want to do. Maybe ask for mentors, join a mentorship group, join some sort of, sometimes I don't love DIY courses because I feel like most of us don't actually do them. But ask for help. That would be my best advice. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're weak. Don't think like, well, I'm such an imposter, I should know this when I go to business. No, nobody knows anything when they first start. Like nobody knows what to do when they become a parent. Like ask for the help and just take one day at a time and, you'll figure it out.
And this is something that you help with, right? Like as far as helping with the mentorship. Yeah. So you help just take out some of those, the mistakes on the way, right? Like a few of the bumps in the road, so that if you are in the mindset, okay, I don't want to learn with my own mistakes, right? I'm ready for somebody to tell me what to do that works. So can you tell me a little bit about what actually you do and how you help wellness studio owners?
I love this role that I've kind of organically grown into. I started presenting at the PMA conference, I don't know, probably like 2019 or so, just about business and about how we can learn how to be better business owners. The same way we learned how to be amazing Pilates instructors, we can learn it. We just have to have the right tools and access. So what I do now is I help women, specifically women that own boutique fitness brands. So Pilates, yoga, physical therapy, all of the above, maybe. And I teach them really what kind of foundations they need to have in order to build the business they want. So we have a lot of home studios in my membership group. So their goals are going to be different than people that have a team of 15 and 20 in multiple locations. So I have a monthly membership. It's so cheap. It's $99 a month. There is no commitment. You can be in for 1 month and decide you hate it, which I don't think anybody will. But it's only women. And we do things like we have a whole SOP process in there. So like, here's all the processes you should have for your SOPs. Here's your outline. We've done like the ChatGPT for you. We have ads trainings in there. We have AI trainings in there now. We have a private Facebook group, so you can ask questions from a variety of, all the other owners that are in there. We talk about scheduling platforms, pricing strategies. We just had someone yesterday post that somebody fell and broke her arm in the studio. So like, I know, awful, it's terrible. Luckily, everything's fine. But to have a group that you can come to and be like, what do I do? We were like, this is what you do. I was like, call your insurance adjuster, call your broker. You have to have an incident report. Luckily, everything was fine. But just being able, so like for $99 a month, my expertise and having run the gamut from being a solopreneur to successful exit, I can save you thousands and thousands of dollars and hours figuring it out on your own. So we also do live group coaching. I do 2 calls a month, and it's just it's a really, really great community. So if anyone wants to check it out, you can visit my website. It's christagurka.com. You did drop the freebie that I have for you guys. So
yeah, and I'll include it as well. Yeah, one more.
.com/Pilates Bridge. There is a free resource. It's actually, I can actually show you what it is. It's this little oops, sorry, Duncan. It's this little cheat sheet that talks all about like all of your healthy expenses, if you're too high, too low. So it's kind of like, it's a little cheat sheet. So you guys can have that for free. And you can always find me I'm most active on Instagram. I'm at Christa Gurka. You can find me on Instagram. And then I have a podcast. It's called Female Empowered. We air new episodes every Tuesday. And so you can grab some really free, actionable, tangible business advice over there.
And I know we were talking a lot about selling your studio, and we didn't spend quite as much time about talking about your journey of selling. And I know you have 2 episodes on your podcast that there is specifically about that journey, what went when you didn't sell first, when first sell fell through, and the second one, what actually happened. So if you're interested in specifically selling your studio, you can grab some great tips from Christa in both of those podcast episodes, and I'm going to include the links to those as well so you can learn. But thank you so much, Christa, for your time, for sharing everything. Yeah, we'll make sure to include all of the links. Yeah,
I hope it was valuable to people, and then people can reach out. I'm always happy to chat with people. So thank you again for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.